and welcome back. This is the Overpower Mountain podcast, and I am your host, Marcel, the greatest Overpower player ever. Can you smell the packs yet? And a good hello to everybody who's already in the chat room, because, everything's always exciting early in these podcasts. Can you smell the cellophane wrap? Can you feel yourself ripping the cellophane wrap off of the box of ERB right now? Ooh, and then piling up the packs on your table. I think my first box is going to be a private box. I think I've actually decided I've changed my mind. And again, hello everybody who's joining us now as we all start to creep in. You know the goat always starts right on time. There's no more mishaps in that realm, that's for sure. We start this show right away and we get to it. But I am just rambling on actually to start the show about getting packs. And I think the first box, I'm going to be very greedy and I'm going to go into full nostalgic mode. And I think I'm going to put the packs out on a table, pour a nice glass of wine, one of the more pricey bottles I've been saving for, you know, usually some great occasion, and this tis be one. And I'm just gonna like slowly open and have a nice empty table where I can like make sure all the card piles are in the right piles the way my mind needs them to be. And I'm just gonna enjoy. Yeah, how hilarious would that be? Just spilling the wine right over. Oh my God, just the excitement of getting like, one of the chase hollows or one of the chase foils, and then you're just like smash. Oh no, oh the pain that would occur in that moment. But just having this nostalgic moment, and some great tunes in the background, and I think I'm just gonna enjoy that first box on my own. And then, of course, we're gonna get right to the breaking episodes with you at home. Uh, it's just one of those things where I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, man, I really miss those moments of just getting that box, going home, and just being in that 2 hour cycle of life, and just they're still ingrained in my mind, truthfully. So I really do look forward to that. Uh, I do see Brian. I got the 3 box level wherever that is, and truthfully, I upgraded to that level on actually great advice from my friend Phil Keffer when he was looking over what you got for each reward level. He had noticed that's the level where you actually get the foil any hero characters. Or sorry, any hero specials. So it was just a smart move to upgrade to that level for me. I was actually at the level underneath, which was like 2 boxes, I believe. So I upgraded in respect to that, and that's really why I did it. But so I got 3. I'm gonna basically break 2 online, and then 1 personally with a nice glass of wine by myself. That's for sure. Um, But yeah, I'm assuming I probably will hunt down at least a box or two afterwards at some sort of aftermarket price. I hope I can find it at some moderate aftermarket price instead of, I don't know if anybody can write. Did Doug Sims sell out of his Overpower boxes? If anybody in the chat knows. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna break basically after the first box of my own, and then we're gonna start breaking on that. So, Monday is the day. I'm so excited. I'm truly am. Uh, this has nothing to do with this show, but it was just kind of the opening as everybody started to creep in. And I know I'm like a fan, just like all of you. It's what I've always told you, and honestly, I'm so excited. I just can't wait, So I'm just hoping all the customs and random things work out, and it's going to be a great, great time for all of us to be opening packs and just enjoying. So again, nothing to do with the show, but just excited and a fan like all of you. So let's start the show. And how do we do that? That's right, we start with the news. Overpower, overpower. Overpower news. So, first, not only do we have the cards fast upon us, the OP season is here quickly as well. For NEOL, we have the Western Shootout. Pew pew. We'll see if some big guns show up and ultimately make that the Wild West of the first Kickstarter tournament out there. It is Dallas, Texas, USA, May 9th and 10th, and you can contact Carl Carfino if you would like to attend such tournament. Great guy, and from what I know, it's going to end up being a great tournament. I do know a couple of the top tier players are going to show up, and cards will be in your hands. So I am very excited. That's what the whole episode's about. We're going to get to the whole legacy idea, in this episode. So it's going to be very exciting as we start to sort of break into that chat and discussion. We have the Canadian Championships, the Ed Memorial Tournament. Niagara Falls, Canada, June 20th and 21st. That you can contact Howard Bertrand on if you want to go to that. Now, that'll be the first tournament I attend this year. So, very exciting. I'd love to meet all of you if you can ultimately make it. It is in Canada, so you do need a passport in that respect. So, make sure you have all the proper documentations. But I promise you, Howard does put on a great spread. It's a very personal style tournament held at his rather nice house. Then, the LRG Regional #1. I don't know if you could generically call something any more generic, but the LRG Regional #1, location TBD. Now, people are starting to get a little bit irked about that. I can see it on the boards. I can see it in the chats. I can start to see that people want to know where these regionals are. I am one of you people. It's very hard for me to understand how a $20,000 tournament doesn't have a location as of yet. But I know things can get thrown together at the last moment and random things, but it'd be nice to know if I could even make it to such a thing, because if one of these regionals happens to be in the Northwest, like in Seattle region, again, I'm probably not going to be able to make it, depending on, of course, if I win the first one. I'll be making it to all of them. But if one of those scenarios happens, it's just, I'd love to know ultimately where we're trying to go for these. I'm probably only going to be able to make one or two because of regional aspects. So I want to know if this is the one I can make. So please, let's get on this location, LRG. It is July 18th and 19th, and you can contact office at lazarusrising.games for information on that. And also in the news, we had an actual tournament happen this last weekend. I know, it is exciting. Spring's upon us, although right in Toronto right now, you're getting a bunch of snow. It is exciting moments right now when you start to feel the buzz of all these tournaments coming, and you're going to get to not only get new cards, but you're going to get to actually play Overpower with a lot of different people, especially as the year rolls on. I can only imagine hundreds may turn into thousands, and thousands may turn into tens of thousands. And then, well, the world's your oyster, as they say at that point. So, Houston Open this last weekend just happened, and congratulations, Chris Rice, on winning with an Any Hero deck. He had Onslaught, X Babies, and Spawn. Little Spider Woman in reserve, so classic style deck, of course, with the Onslaught switch. I really do appreciate that. I do hope in my heart of hearts, Chris, I didn't actually see the pictures of the day. I did just see your deck listing. I do hope that you picked the promo Onslaught, because I think everybody out there knows the promo Onslaught is way more beautiful than the Monumental Onslaught. I don't know. Personal opinion, I hope it was. But if it wasn't, Onslaught for the win on that. Of course, he had Event Horizon, very underthought home base occurring right now. I have to say, especially as we approach the new set, I can see there being a reason, and that might be all the points you can actually afford to give to a home base is one. But I could ultimately see a reason where Event Horizon and playing something like, five of the actual events could end up actually being a really big meta moving forward. Of course, he did beat out Ben Taylor with a Department H deck. That's what I'm talking about. I did happen to see Alpha Flight was on the front line. That's probably why you came second and, had a wonderful day because, Alpha Flight is also an underused character that just rocks. And they are Canadian as well. Mojo World Battle Site paired up with that Department H. So great job, Chris. Glad to see Houston having fun. IP news, IP news, IP news will be announced any day now. And that's the news. Overpower, overpower, overpower news. So I was reading the comprehensive rule book, and I have to say this. Yes, first off, I'm a very good reader, for all of you out there wondering. But I will say this. I was reading the comprehensive rule book. I apologize there. I hope people didn't think that I was actually breaking, the news on that. Just any day now, any day, maybe next week. So again, back to this idea. So I was reading over the comprehensive rule book and I was writing a show and I realized even I, as a fan of Overpower, wouldn't want to watch the show that I was writing about the rules. So what I thought is I would actually add a segment to the show instead of, boring people with an hour and, it's probably got to be 2 parts and then on and on and on. I would just sort of interject, and again, this is just an introduction. In the future, this will be a lot faster. I'm just going to sort of interject these new rules as they sort of approach us and they get approached in questions on the boards. And, I'm either going to go over 1 or 2 depending on what's happening. And so each week I would basically focus down on a rule point and sort of explain it to you and how it sort of works both in the modern format as well as how it would breach into Legacy or any other formats that eventually start to become more popular. And of course, if it even affects those other formats at all. There are certain aspects where the rules I might just explain for modern purposes and it might not even affect Legacy, or explain something that, hits Legacy, but in modern is just a straightforward sort of aspect or thought. So here we go. Rules, rules, rules. So in page 1516 of the comprehensive rulebook. Now, of course, if you have it at home, and I'm sure you have all of your Overpower documentation sitting in front of you, as well as every single card you own, because, like a fan like me, that's what I pull out every time I'm watching or thinking about Overpower. So pull out that comprehensive rulebook right now, and you can read along with me. It states, an attack is any card that can do numerical damage or has the word target in the card text. And then in a paraphrase, it says it will also have the sword icons to initiate and show you that it's an attack. Directly underneath that, the next bullet point states, all other cards are utility cards, including cards that affect opponent. First and foremost, I'm going to say you should have called it a utility action, okay? Because it's not a utility card, it's a special card. And you don't want to confuse new players to think that there's a different sort of special card aspect out there for it. Personal opinion. What does this mean, though, moving forward for Modern and Legacy? Because it actually does have an effect, and we're going to get into it right now in terms of how this ruling works. I think the big thing is the ability to pass with cards in your hand that say the word opponent now, not target. Even though you couldn't attack after a pass, there could be many, many, many beneficial reasons to hold on to these cards. One of the many beneficial reasons is the negate. It has the word opponent. And of course, in this rule book, negates are actually defined in a completely different way, but that's for another ruling. But there's other cards, like in Legacy, that, you can no longer throw a 4, may make an additional, and then follow that up with opponent must discard one placed card. Opponent must discard one placed card is no longer an attack. It is a utility card. Whew. Whoa. Whoa. That's a big moment, right? So now these 4 AAs have the wording may make one additional attack. So now all of a sudden when you start looking at these 5s, a la like, Captain America or Kingpin, that have may play one additional special card. Now all of a sudden you can get into these scenarios where you can start stringing a couple of these types of things off. So, there are going to be cards, and now as I'm starting to progress and look into, these legacy thoughts, I start to just see more and more sort of opportunity for different scenarios already with opponent. So you can pass with Hades and use it later in the round because it says opponent. You can pass with Colossus, discard 3, then surprise your opponent with it after because it says opponent. It's not an attack. It's really unique. You have to understand the comprehensive rulebook is laying it out for you. And I'm actually shocked when, this rulebook's been out now for, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks, we'll call it, if at best. How many people I know that I've talked about with Overpower who haven't actually read it. And, when you actually start to read this thing, there are a lot of little micro changes that will ultimately affect not really modern per se, because the cards are being built with the rule in mind. But as we, progress and sort of like, dare I say, transgress to this, full legacy format, it's going to get into this scenario where interesting things can happen because cards were worded more interestingly in the past. Let's put it that way. So it is an interesting change to opponent cards. It's curious if there is any other cards that are truly affected by it. One of the things you could do, just popped in my mind, is you could DZ your Dracula to save him, and then after you've DZ'd your own Dracula, you can then play opponent, may now play cards with the word teammate. Not an attack. DZ's just got better, especially if your other character has opponent on it. Interesting. Weird but cool. I think there will be something that will come from this as we sort of look up all the old cards that say opponent. Now, I think that you need to sort of focus and remember that, especially in the first set, and Power Leech is a great example, a lot of the cards a lot of the cards in previous sets said opponent, like Power Leech or Magneto, target opponent may not attack. And you have to understand that in the old game, those were already sort of errata into a scenario where they do say target character. So some of them did hold on to the opponent aspect. And like I said, there's a few examples that I brought up, but um, it's going to be interesting moving forward as I think sort of people look at that and maybe play with the language. So I do see that Mage's Musing has said that, plot twist Dracula's to the last man no longer says opponent, may not play the cards, just can't use them to attack or defend. And, that's true. However, as far as I know, in the legacy format, you're still allowed to play old Dracula with old Dracula MOE cards. So I could actually see an advantage to that scenario taking place as well. So just a thought as we're all having these discussions as well. Um, and that's rules, rules, rules. I don't want to beat you over the head with a bunch of different rules. I just sort of want to get you in the frame of mind to understanding that there are micro changes in the rules. And, these are ways that they can get affected in different scenarios. So in this lesson, rules, 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 we have, understanding that opponent cards are now utility actions. They are not per se defined as attack scenarios. Now, I'm hoping, and of course I haven't double checked this now that I've just thought of it, that there isn't, attack icons on the opponent cards, because essentially, even though it can be an attack, that could also cause some confusion as, new players sort of adjust in as well. I think as we move on here, we're going to sort of get in, and it's time for the OP topic, because as much as you come in for, rules news and news, you come in for the knowledge. This one is more of an open discussion. Good to, you know what? Before we get into this open discussion, we do have the rules guru himself on the board. So it is a definition, and that is actually true. I do recall reading that in the comprehensive. So David McMillan is stating in the comments that the sword icon does not mean attack. It just means you can play it offensively on your turn or defensively on your turn. Again, we're not going to make this a big rules episode by any means. This is just a continuation sort of thought, but that's really good to know. So, for instance, if as I'm stating in my scenario, let's just say, for example, Drax card said opponent, can't play universe cards. It would have the swords on it because you can play it offensively on your turn, but essentially it would fall under the same scenario of, the idea that opponent cards act as a utility action, not necessarily as an attack or defense. And that's rules, 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 my friends. So the OP topic we got going on this week is probably one that I think everybody's starting to get to. I was at the scenario where I got to see the set a little bit early, as a lot of people know. I got to sort of build decks early on in my mind. I got to start to form all these more modern thoughts and creations and start to, what everybody's been doing over the last week and a half. And after I started to sort of culminate my ideas of what I think will be competitive, as much as you can sort of mentally or visually make decks without having the physical cards and playing other people, I think it's just one of those scenarios that I started to drift and wander and start to think, well, what if I mix this ERB character into the legacy format? What could come of this? What thoughts could spark my mind? And boy, did they spark, and they sparked quickly, I have to admit. So I don't know about you, but when I approached it, it was very overwhelming until, I really started to put this brainstorm together. And it was, I didn't know where to start. That was actually one of my biggest thoughts. It was a lot. The ERB world set, it's adding a lot of depth and strategy in different ways. Not only do we all have a steep learning curve with the new rule set, but even basic card interactions are changing on a basic battle level when it comes to certain cards and how they interact with other cards. So in our mind frame, we're already going to have this learning curve as we're pushing through this. So to incorporate all of that in terms of understanding not only this new rule set, but this new set of characters and what their depth and quality comes in at. And as we all know, as we all looked at all the ERB characters, you start to realize that, again, there are a lot of characters that have a lot of really good specials. They like as they said, a lot of them have, let's get realistic. 3 to 4 really good specials that could totally be playable. Some of them do have, 5 great specials, or 6 great specials. How many ever it is, I can't recall it now off the top of my head. But please do throw it in the chat. I will say it right away. So it's just interesting, and I was like, okay, well, how does that mix in? Am I mixing in now the thought of like the strategy depth of like the combo-iness of ERB and just mixing it in with a little bit more defensive strategy and going forward in that sort of process? And then I was like, okay, well, let's break it down to more basic questions. How do I incorporate this new set? Do I look at it and say, okay, I have this strong archetype, the strong meta that was working in the old legacy format? Are there characters that I can sort of infuse and make those old archetypes stronger? Then I was like, well, are there 8 tent poles that can now sort of like be worth building my own new whole deck idea around? Thank you, David. It's 6 cards per character. A few have only 5, probably because they were overpowered or hit whatever structure they had in their own. So it's really interesting, as is there this 8 character that can now be this new tent pole for this new conceptual idea as we move forward, and works now with their combo style cards off an old character and flexes well in that respect. Then I said, well, are there any, standout characters by themselves, like that aren't just like tentpole 8 style characters that are standing out on their own, that could either complement a team style or, create an interesting scenario. And at this point, please do chime in on the comments, because, I really want to hear your thoughts about mixed play as I start to chime off these ideas. And again, I sat down, and this is really what I chimed off in a few moments, where I was just thinking about deck building, and I was thinking about the difference of who I could compare, and because one of the biggest issues, of course, we're all seeing in ERB is, threat level cost, right? And now what we're trying to do here ultimately is, Well, all of a sudden now I got all these cheap characters, that do all these other fancy things, whether they be defensive or, cheap eights that I can pair up now with these big monsters. So there's all this, just like there's so many thoughts. And then, like I said, the old archetypes, they dominated metas. Can I make them stronger with these new characters, this new archetypes? There's just so much. And after asking myself all these questions, the answer was like, yes, yes, and yes. So it just created more sort of chaos in my mind where I was like, yes, yes, there's an 8 character that I could build a new whole deck style around. Yes, there's an amazing, 7 character. Yes, there's that can dynamically stand out on its own. Joshua, one of the thoughts I had originally with Van Helsing was, oh my God, here is, combat's answer for everything. And if the rule set didn't per se change the way it has, with the way like negates operate and not being able to, now you can negate something like a JW or something because it's in the astral plane. Again, another rules day. Um, but with scenarios like that, I was looking at someone like Van Helsing and I was like, wow, 7 combat. He's only 20. He's got to negate himself and he's got a JW. This is going to be the greatest character alive. And then I was like, well, JWs aren't as great as they once were, and probably even less so when it gets to the legacy level. And we will eventually, talk about that aspect as well. But, I started like thinking about all these dynamic builds with all these different questions. And then I was like, okay, you got to calm down. You got to focus. You got to go, okay, what's first? What was the first question? Are these old decks styles out there that can like, are there these old deck styles out there that can really sort of like be complemented by these new characters? And I was like, okay, well, first, I think there's definitely enough oomph in someone like Deja Thoris to like, you know, soup up the Lambo. All of a sudden, something along those lines. You have Cthulhu with Heroes for Hire, creating this like dynamic teamwork power deck. And people are always like, well, that's a lot of points. And it's like, well, instantly you can just put like Beast the Brood and Old Spider Woman. That all works. That's a team all of a sudden. So Legacy is going to be just this sort of mixed, mashed excitement, and it's going to be really unique of what works early when you're looking at cards. When you're looking at someone like Cthulhu, like, somebody had brought up the board. I don't want to take full credit for this by any means, but I'm going to say it today. Somebody was like, oh, okay, I'll just play Cthulhu. I'll play his, team is -5, and then I will just power mimic that, and then the whole team's -5 again. So essentially, your opponent's team is, has 10 hit points for everybody on the front line. What did you just say? In 2 cards, you just took down my whole front line to, by 10 hit points. Whoa. And that's just from a character and a battle site combo. I'm not even talking about all the other 3 characters on the team. Like, understand there is going to be some wild things out there. And again, the player pool is just getting deeper and deeper. Every day I see new players on the boards. Every day I see, players that were new 3-4 months ago now, dropping rule knowledge on new people. Like, people are getting into this, and, you know, it's going to be interesting as we dynamically sort of start to build on these old ideas, but new ideas mixing in with, the new rule set. It's all just going to be this mishmash, dare I say, awesomeness of a moment in Overpower history, because it's just, you're going to have this sort of modern approach where you're going to get to play in these sort of, high level tournaments with this X amount, player pool, and then you're all of a sudden going to have this like wildly dynamic, over the top sort of mishmash that's going to happen in the legacy circuit. I'm excited to play both, to be honest with you. I think for me, as I started to like dive into more of these thoughts, the legacy side obviously started to excite me because there's just more to it. I think once you already start to add another 39 characters for them and another 39, and then they're at like, 100 and change. Next thing you know, all of a sudden Modern's going to be pretty dynamic again too in its own gameplay. So, but for the start right now with just one set, once you get to your Modern thoughts and you sort of get to your game style play and your decks that you're going to build, next thing you know, you start thinking about Legacy and you're like, Spider-Man can all of a sudden work in this sort of different style deck that I'm looking at here. You could have a reserve with sorry, you could have Carson, new Carson in reserve with Dracula and Scarlet Witch up front, and all of a sudden your stats all work together, and you basically have almost Dracula paid for. You got 18 more points. You go with a 16-point character there, and the next thing you know, you can put in Spartan Training Ground, or you put in a 16-point character there, and you put in Odin's Vault. There are so many dynamic thoughts when it comes up to this. And then, like I said, with the old archetypes, it's like, well, you just got two more characters with draw threes. So draw three decks aren't going anywhere anytime soon. One of those characters got a full team universal defense, and the other one got five other amazing cards. Like literally amazing cards other than that draw three. So that deck's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's gonna be so unique as we move forward with these legacy thoughts. And obviously I can only imagine, older legacy players will have this light advantage of just, like I said, going through these old deck archetypes, going through these old generational moments of overpower that we played. Like, it will feel to some degree like something we've played at some point in our history. So there will be some light inner advantage to a lot of this. And obviously being the greatest overpower player alive, like, there's a lot to that too that's going to give me a lot of advantage as well. But like, think about like a Dr. Watson with Beyonder. Like, did you guys just look at the cards? He's 16 points. And now all of a sudden you put those two together, and now you're just like moving and taking and drawing, moving and taking and drawing, moving and taking and drawing. And then you're like, remove the hits through, I don't know, a Sclepion or something along those lines. It's really interesting as we go. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm just giving you thoughts. I'm just trying to spark your own creativity as you contemplate your own moves, going forward. So it's so interesting as you're going to go, and it's not even, we're just talking character combos. Like, we're going to get into the depth of, battle sites with combo style cards and new characters mixed with old characters with defense, like with big hits coming. It's gonna be chaos. It's gonna be insane. You know, uh, you know, think about a deck along the lines of, you know, Onslaught with Count of Monte Cristo, and on the flip side, you put someone else like, a Shang-Chi or something along those lines. Like, all of a sudden you like cannon fodder over, and then you're just like avoid discarding. Like, whoa, like, it's just, there's so much you can do, like, there's so many thoughts that you can do in this game. It was just blowing my mind, and they just kept coming out. The questions I kept asking myself, um, when you're looking at like, can an 8, be a tent pole of a new deck? And I was like, well,
what do you think Sun Wu is? Swiss cheese? Like, Sun Wu's no joke. And then I started like thinking about deck archetypes that just happened. And, we had that great deck with John Keffer. And, his primary thought was, well, he just needed to get his combo in play. And he used his events to actually move those back up. So, Sun Wu with, Rebel Forces Regroup event, where I can actually concede, get beneficial play from Sun Wu, and then just use my event to push everything right back up. Whoa. Wow. Like like I'm sparking. I'm here. I'm shooting ideas at you here. Like legacy is so exciting, and you know it's it's just one of those things where you're gonna have to look at overpower a little bit differently, because again, we're taking in these new rule sets, these new things that will make some card interactions different, and you have to, as I harp in all of my podcasts, knowing the rules in and out, through and through, gives you advantage over your opponent 100% of the time. Having that ability, to just know these little inert rules. I can't express how many games that's won, and we've talked about it in past ones. So just knowing those things will just benefit you so much more. Like, let's not even, and I can't even believe it came up next because it's literally my next point. Josh is talking about Wicked Witch Vertigo, and literally I'm just like, well, then there's these brand new cheap eights that now you're sort of flexing into the legacy as well. Like Wicked Witch and Sherlock Holmes, like they're no joke of characters. Like you get an 8 with a negate. God rest your soul, Ed, but I know you're turning because you're like, what? They gave an 8 character and like, woo! He would play that in Modern. He would play that in Legacy. He would probably fall asleep with a Sherlock Holmes under his bed with that negate as well, and just be like, I get an 8 and a negate all in one, all in one. And it's like, then there's the idea that a defensive Vertigo exists. Like, I'm speechless to a certain degree. Think about that. A defensive Vertigo of old, that was banned. That's how good that card was. Now, I get it. It's a one per deck. But there are characters out there, my friend, who are hard to kill, and you can pile hard on them. Claw, MOE Secret Hidden Gem. You got it from me here first. You know, Phoenix. Like, there are things you can do, and these characters are cheap. Like it's just gonna be so amazing as we move forward and have this action going on. I just think it's just like everything's just sparking, and then I'm just like, oh my god, I need a ton of people to play with now, because like now I got all these ideas, and now I just want to play every single one of them. You know. And this is what I'm gonna say too. Like Legacy now, when you turn on Legacy, it's changing, because you can't sleep on combat characters anymore. The fact that I can take like a Leonidas or a Zorro, pair it up with a little Spartan training ground, and like revolve my deck around that now, find characters that complement that. Heck, put those two together. Put them with Old Mojo, who has a 5 strength as well. Works incredibly well with a Spartan training ground, from what I know. Like, and he's 6 fighting, like 5 strength. Like these thoughts are just crazy. There's so many good things you're going to be able to do with new characters coming in, and I'm so curious to see, like, there is combos out there that are just going to be, I almost want to say, you know almost feel like the Lambo of old, because those two combat characters I just mentioned, they both have team defense. Like, they have team defense. So now all of a sudden you could build a bullseye Leonidas deck and have some real actual gumption to a deck like that, or a Zorro Wolverine deck, and really amplify on Wolverine's 5 as well. Like, there are like real builds out there now that I think you can really work around, because before the problem really fell in, especially with combat, that you couldn't have these bigger, better characters. And now, like, the fact that like Leonidas has a teammate or him avoid one attack, and an 8 can attack or defend. Like, these are the characters that you could build a brand new whole concept around. And again, like, I'm just shooting these ideas at you because, like you, there's so much going on. And again, these are just the ideas that I sort of started to put together as I was putting the show together. These aren't even like the 100 other ideas I have in my other notebook, where I'm just sort of like creating all these decks. And trust me, you need to do this at home too, because you'll have this great idea. Just write it in your notes quickly on your phone or something, because you'll forget that in 2 seconds. The next thing you know, you're like, oh, I wish I remembered that deck. Like, oh, Zeus has a threat level cost that costs you a lot. Oh, no problem. Here's my friend the X babies. What? Oh, yeah. You just play a little cannon fodder onto the X babies, and you just get that in before Zeus throws any of his nines, and oh, he has no stress about defending himself anymore. Wow. You know? Like, you're laughing at that point. And then on top of it, like, we have standalone characters that are just good enough on their own to build a team around, that aren't even an 8 pole character. I briefly touched on him before, but the Count of Monte Cristo, how, where, when that man is only worth a threat level of 20, I am befuddled. But I am glad, because at that price point, in an intellect style deck, you can all of a sudden just, we talked about the draw threes, you pair them. Instant Thought is obviously like Mr. Fantastic or something like that, and you have two draw threes going, and so that sort of respect. And it's like, the things you can do with him, because he almost plays that like junior tent pole, I'll call it. New term, junior tent pole, where he has that 6-7 going on, almost, a la the Dark Beast or Beast himself. And, when you have that 6-7, you can start to flex, and you can start to go in terms of mixing the suits, which obviously in modern is something that, is probably going to have to happen, probably where the most competitive decks will ultimately fall at. But when you go to Legacy, you won't ultimately have to do that too much. But now, with a powerhouse character like Count of Monte Cristo, like, I don't even know if you need him in an intellect deck. Like, I think you could flex him into a fighting deck just as easy, and just sort of play around with a little bit of the any power cards. Like, Count of Monte Cristo, woo! Like, I could see a build like Count of Monte Cristo, Heroes for Hire, Donald Pierce, Old Spider-Woman. Like something like that. Like, you can already think, like, you see what I'm doing with the suits, and how I'm looking at it in sort of a more abstract way. It's just, you really dynamically can do a lot when someone is a junior tentpole like Count of Monte Cristo. So not only did he get that junior tentpole status, but he got every single card is phenomenal of his. And as we already talked about, the idea that he has the avoid you discard. Like that was like maybe Shang-Chi's premier card, and now he has a version of that. Now you're not getting him on any sort of Beyonder deck, but at the same time, there are ways now to shift, as we just spoke about, that are just so completely different. What a great character. Robin Hood. Woohoo! Seems like all the card advantage and board disruption you could dream of. Robin Hood himself stealing everything from your opponent's side and just giving it right back to you. What a great character. You know, I wonder actually when you look at characters like Robin Hood and you wonder how, like, ERB characters are going to flex in. I wonder if a combat ERB centric combat deck could actually perform very well in the legacy, because what I've noticed, especially about ERB set at Worlds, is the combat characters are just like they loved combat. They just a lot of 7 combats. They all got really good cards. A lot of them with like team defense style and so on in that respect. You throw in a John Carter who's like the new Serpent Society, but with any power 8s instead of 2/8s. No, oh wait, no, he's actually got 2/8s as well, John Carter. He just got 2 actual 8s instead of a 2/8. Way better than them Serpent Society character. It's just there's so much that you're going to be able to do. The legacy builds are almost going to be endless to a certain degree. Oh, wait, I saved the best for last because we all know there's one ERB character that stands above the rest. And I'm curious if anybody can write it in the comments who the next character that's about to come out of my mouth is. I'm actually going to give you a few seconds to type in your guess. But there's one character that just stands out above the rest. And not only do I think that there's so much ability to flex this character into legacy, but when I started thinking about that character and deck builds and what could potentially happen, I was just like, oh, this is where something may actually be not per se broken, but getting to the level of like incredibly high win percentage. We got an Invisible Man guess. I'm guessing probably people are going to be thinking, I'm talking about the big boys, some of the big characters. No more waiting. Morgan Le Fay. What can I not say about this character? Wow, wow, wow. Straight 19 points. 3 of the best 1 per decks you could probably have in the game. Morgan, I'm going to need you. Oh, we got one. Howard either guessed it or wrote it in real fast after I said it. Morgan Le Fay, I'm going to need you to meet my friend Clint. That's Clint Barton. That's Hawkeye. Switch event, anybody? Oh, wait. Morgan can switch anybody with a special. Wait, Morgan can switch anybody and take away the venture. Oh, Hawkeye can switch anybody and take away the venture. Oh, the switch event's going to mess you up. Oh, wait. Let's just for fun play Hell's Kitchen as a battle site and put in the Enforcer's switch, lose venture as well. Like, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Dynamic. Like the things you're going to be able to do and play around. And the way people are talking, even like with her 3. Sorry, I do see a lot of people saying the Morgan switch does not take away venture. Apologies on that. I was more just referencing the idea that, the switching ability can occur and ultimately, the other 2 take away venture. But it's just giving you the ideas. But see there, love it. Gave you the idea. You guys already shut me down. Thanks a lot. But, it's just those ideas. And again, it's just coming up with those ideas, thinking about those different ideas that I think, is ultimately going to be able to create these scenarios. Now, of, again, high win percentages. I would never say broken decks by any means. Again, the legacy builds are endless. Is anything broken? Is there anything that I sort of saw right away that I was like, ooh, I don't really think that's a good idea? Like when they decided to play some DC tournament with some random DC characters, and Sean Ballantyne found a way that, you know, they actually named a card the same thing as another card, and then all of a sudden his character could hold dupes of it. Random story, but it just shows those moments that can ultimately happen by mistake. Legacy builds will have that. Someone out there today, probably listening to this podcast, whether it be rewatched or now live, somebody's going to build something and show up to one of these NAOLs, and my jaw's just going to drop because I'm going to be like, wow, that is just well thought out, my friend. It's just, I'm excited. Like I said, the player depth pool is just getting more and more and more deeper. And it's just going to be exciting because I can even see on the boards that, players are starting to like funk around with the ideas of different characters doing this, different characters doing that. I could see an abusive situation with maybe Green Goblin and a Barsoom combo. Green Goblin has the jack up his stats, but draw a card. You would get to draw 2 with that, if you have Barsoom as your battle site or as your home base. So I wouldn't say it's broken, but it's something that could be abusive, being that it's non-1 per deck. I would probably say something with the combo nature of ERB and the addition of battle sites is probably, plus the new rule set sort of like angling in things, is probably where something will be found. Now, the question is, will you be the one to find it? And I believe you will, because, you're watching this show for a reason. You're trying to get up that Overpower mountain. You're trying to get your knowledge to another level. So when you show up to these tournaments, you are ahead of the curve. You want to be the next great one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching me tonight. By the next podcast, some of you may actually have your cards from ERB. This is the Overpower Mountain podcast. I am your host, the OP Goat. Keep thinking Overpower. Keep deck building. And getting to the top of the Overpower Mountain. Thanks again for joining me. I have to say, this is only the start of this ERB mixing into Legacy discussion. Because as you can see, it's such a huge topic. I just touched on a few decks. And, you can already see that there's just so much to go off. I hope I inspired you. I hope I gave you thoughts out there to already, either work off one of the thoughts I gave you, or just, continue to get deeper in the mind. Again, I'm not trying to tell you what decks to build. I'm trying to tell you to understand Overpower and build something that works for you, your play style moving forward. Thanks again. Good night, everybody.